Good morning, everybody. I'm Alan Masters and Chuck Williams here at the Foundation of Human Understanding Sunday Conversation. Today, we talk about fear knocked at the door, courage got up and opened the door, and no one was there. And it's interesting because we all have so much fear. You could say the word fear or doubt. From being who we should be and saying what we should say, that actually we never really communicate properly with each other in this world, and because it's all boxed up inside of us. And so I thought we should talk about that for a little bit. How to overcome that fear, how to overcome those doubts. And, what are they? To me, we have this from the time we're little children. And along the way, along the path in life, we realize that, as my father would say, the liar lies. And inside of us is this like the little devil on one shoulder and the angel on the other. Well, the angel is kind of the whisperer. The angel quietly says what you need to hear, where this little devil on the shoulder typically will yell at you and tell you you're not good enough, you don't know what you're doing, you shouldn't be sitting on that stage talking to those people, you haven't got a clue what you're talking about. Your friends will tell you, you talk too much, you never let Chuck talk. I'm sorry, Chuck. I'm sorry.
Chuck talk.
But at the end of the day, I think we're supposed to open our mouths sometimes, say what you have to say, Beverly, and even if it's wrong sometimes, not that you want to just say everything what's on your lung is on your tongue, but you should say, if you feel that it is the right thing to say, you should say it. Don't say it with anger. Don't wait till it bottles up and you explode on somebody. Say it when you hear it and when you feel it. And even if maybe you're mistaken. I didn't use the word wrong. It's mistaken.
It's funny because I've known the Masters family indirectly, kind of on the sidelines for many years, and the one master other than Roy that I was attracted to was Alan, because I said, what I liked about Alan is he just lets it all hang out. There's no, he thinks it, he says it. I remember once I was a teacher at the school here in town, and we had a graduation, and people were up on the stage, and they were doing it all kind of formal and everything, and at some point, Alan wanted to say something. He was in the audience. He just jumped on the stage, got the microphone, started talking, and I thought, that's neat. That's neat. And it's not so much that he had a great deal to say, he just was going to say it because it was just, you felt like you had to say something. And he was willing to be a fool. And most people, you don't want to be a fool, you want to be right.
That reminded me of something, actually. About 20 years ago, I was at an event. I'm a car guy, so I go to big car events. And I realized that if I was going to have a chance to talk to this very important person, I needed to position myself close. And I needed to be willing to be bold. What do they say? Fortune follows the bold. So I didn't know what I was going to do. I knew that if I was near the front, there was stairways on both sides. I had a quicker path to slide along the edge of the stage and jump up. And as soon as the person on stage was done talking, I went, I'm getting up there. And all of a sudden I flew up onto the stage. I don't even know how I did it. It was like 5 feet high. And all of a sudden I'm standing on stage, and it was just me and him. And I had a microphone. And I went right over to him and I started asking questions. And I was the first guy there.
That's great.
And I asked him all the questions I had in about 2 minutes, while everybody else in the scrum is trying to get on stage and fighting and pushing to get up there. But I thought, I'm going to do what it takes. I'm not going to let doubt and fear. And okay, so I jumped from the floor up to the stage and did a little acrobatics along the way. I was there. And I asked like 4 questions that were important to me, and I said, okay, thank you. And then it was like, you've seen all those microphones go in. But I had the first questions. Now, about an hour later, I saw a guy that was the host of a TV show. And he says, Masters, "You were right in my shot." And he said it to me with a smile on his face. He says, "But I got to hand it to you. You were the first one there, so there's nothing I could do." And he says, "You're a go-getter." And I think that's the way you have to be in life. Because I remember thinking, oh no, I was in his shot. And I didn't know. I mean, I broke the rules a little bit by jumping up on stage.
And there's a justice in life, because if you're jumping up and you're out of line, you're probably going to trip and fall and break your nose.
I could have.
There are little things that happen to sort of interrupt your aggressiveness. If
And
it's out of
sometimes
line.
that happens.
Yeah,
so
and you
you'll
learn.
go, "I should have taken the stairs." But it's interesting because that particular guy helped me get the job, which was the best job I've had in the last 30 years of my life. That particular guy that I got in his shot.
Right.
He respected that act, that one singular act, so much of boldness. Fortune favors the bold.
Yeah, I was over at my uncle's house. I was probably second or third grade. I don't remember what grade I was in. And I was supposed to do my homework while they were visiting. And my grandmother said, "I want you to do your homework while we're here." And I said, "No, I don't want to do my homework. I'm here to visit too." And so my uncle came up to me and he said that if you don't do your homework, we're going to put diapers on you and call you Diaper Tim, is what he said. Yeah. And then I looked at my grandmother and I asked her, I said, "Well, you wouldn't let him do that to me?" And she goes, "Yes, we would." And I was pretty easily intimidated back in those days, but he had persisted and was pursuant. And ever since that incident, I had this distance from him. I didn't like him anymore.
Yeah. This is your grandfather.
My great uncle.
Great uncle.
I wasn't related to him, but he was married to my aunt. And he was probably in that time in his late or mid 80s. And he was pretty old, and he basically had a real bad temper. He was kind of from the old school. And so my mother didn't stick up for me, my grandmother turned against me and all that. And so when he came to visit about a year later, he came in, and I really didn't want to see him. He sat in the corner of the room on the couch, and I didn't, my mom said, "Say hi to your uncle," and I said hi, and that was it. I don't think I even got up to say hi, see him. But I used to like him. It was like he'd be a lot of fun a lot of times. But
what's interesting about this is we have little stupid things that happen to us throughout our whole lives.
Sure.
Okay? That was actually not a little stupid thing. That was actually a very cruel thing, okay? Yeah. And that, I'm sure, stuck with you a long time. And I realize this is an important story because it brought me to something that happened this morning, early in the morning. I was talking to a lady, just a brief encounter. And I said something about, I like peanut butter, or whatever it was. And she said, "I hate peanut butter, but I was always forced to eat it like a peanut butter and jelly sandwich." And so when our parents, and this is the point I'm going to get to, force us to do something we don't want to do, they're willful with us.
yeah,
And that literally, they're putting that will inside of us. They're imposing something on a child that can't really do anything about it. We're helpless. And Chuck said something, so everything comes together like this. He said, "I actually defend things that were like willfully put on me later on in life as if they're my idea." Yeah. Isn't that interesting? How something that was done to us as a child, it's the same way how the person that is bullied becomes the bully, right? We hate being bullied, and then what happens? We take on that nature and go and bully somebody else. It's the hate that is the damaging part of it. The hate is the conduit that glues it into us. So as a child, we don't know any better. We hate that they did to us. It's an unjust thing. We hate it, as we should. What little children, what are we supposed to do? I mean, we hate it. We don't like. But as we grow up, now what happens is we have a chance to revisit that. Just like these things will come up, like you said. Maybe you could talk about that. Something somebody was willful, that they did to you. Later on in life, you actually said, "That's how I like to do it."
Right. You
So how
justify
did that
it.
happen, if you remember?
Well, it's exactly the same process you're describing, which is that you resist it with anger or some kind of an emotional reaction.
An
You
animal,
resist it.
an animal
You
reaction.
can't help yourself.
Right.
It's not like, well, I'm going to resist this. No, it just comes out. Your favorite uncle now was doing something so cruel, it just brought out of you, because you had a lot of nice feelings being around him telling stories as you were younger, and now all of a sudden he's triggered something, and it's funny because you kept saying he was old school. He had this terrible anger. Well, his old schoolness somehow triggered something in you, and although you're not old school, which is the guy says, don't tell me what to do. That's the old school. You know, pioneers won't take no for an answer. You're not like that, but you are like that. Somehow that old school nature has gotten into you because now the trauma fixates you and you're a storyteller.
Yeah.
Now, it doesn't mean you couldn't be a storyteller anyway. You could just be a storyteller because you like doing it.
Yeah, I do.
But it could be that part of that, because I found for many years until recently, your storytelling has stood in the way of your seeing and being open about things. And now, because you'd always be into the story, now you're just right there.
You know what's interesting about that? I have 4 kids, and all my kids are different, just like my family, in my siblings. We're all different. One of my kids is a storyteller, and I find that he gets lost telling the story, the why. His why is this long story. By the time he's done telling this long story of why this, that, the other, and then this happened, and then the sky is falling, and then the chicken ran across the street, and then I came to, and that's how I found this. Too many words. Too many words. Now we're sitting up here on stage having to talk. We're discussing this.
Yeah.
But as you go through your life, when you see this wave of words coming, you see it coming. It's like a wave of reason. We'll call it reason. Because within that wave of reason, there's the truth. And the reason why you are willing to ride that wave of reason, because somewhere in there is the truth. Okay? Our journeys needs to be to find the simplest path to the truth and not get caught up in the foam of the wave once it's broken. Hold your thought. Because this morning we were talking about my dad. My dad woke up yesterday morning and I was sitting talking to him. He's at my house right now. And he started saying some amazing things. He wasn't looking me in the eye. He was just looking, just talking next to the fireplace in a chair, talking about life and Adam and Eve and the Garden of Eden. And he says, I know how and why we left the garden, and I know how to get back. And he says to tell everybody out there hello, and that's what he's going to bring back. But we talked about this. He said something to Chuck, which was very interesting. And when you said it, I don't even think you realized it. But he said, what did he say to you? Something about, I need to say it more so I can...
What he said to me, because I went over to visit the next day after he came home to Alan's house, and he said, come here closer. And so I ended up sitting, there was nowhere to sit, so I ended up sitting on the floor on my knees, like a kid. And so he was talking about life and how life is supposed to end. He said there's another way for life to end or to continue or how it moves. And he started talking, and he didn't have it like some real nice, concise, clear idea. He was sort of, talking around it and about it in a very limited way in the sense that it's not real eloquent, but it didn't matter. And my wife was picking up her own message from what he was saying, and I was getting things, some of what he said resonated from what I had recently realized and seen about life, but didn't know if it was true. I just sort of, I wonder if that's true. And at some point he said, well, this is the first time I've said this to anyone. He said, I'll have to say it more times so that it gets clearer. And I said, sure. And in some ways, that's the way everyone is. Exactly. If you begin to follow your own intuitive nature, because we have 2 natures. We have the human being that kind of rose up in this traumatizing world, and then we have this other nature which always told us that's not fair. Who told a 1-year-old it's not fair to put him down or something? He knew it. You have a sense of justice in you. And it's so well defined. It's not a word sense, because a parent can be impatiently changing a diaper or giving a baby the food that they had to fix, and the baby feels the impatience and they won't eat. Or they'll
Then what
fuss.
happens is, here's what happens. All the way back to that, the parent, through that impatience, puts that impatience in that kid, creates a will in that kid, creates a ego to defend the will.
They call it up because that's in our nature.
Yeah.
But our point
But you're
in life-
feeding the wrong side.
Our point in life is to realize, as we grow older and get involved in generations and everything, is to see, this isn't me.
Right.
Where did this come from?
Right.
There's something in me that says, I don't feel comfortable.
It's the same as a
being this
virus.
proud. Yeah.
Same as a
You
computer
just-
virus.
You just feel like, I don't know what it is, but I want, and then you try to be something else and it doesn't work. And
Let's talk about not fitting in.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of us feel like we don't fit in. The question is, what are you trying to fit into?
Yeah.
That's what you have to ask yourself. We have to ask all of ourselves. Recently, my family's been split over things, right down the middle. I happen to be the guy in the middle. And this side wants me to be on their side. This side wants me to be on their side. And they're both pulling me. And I look at this and I go, interesting. Wow. Do I have to be on a side? Do I need to be part of a tribe? Do you feel like you're part of a tribe? Don't you remember how many people have been listening to my father for almost 50 years? Of course, my whole life at 59 almost. My dad said at one point, I don't want you to be part of my church or tribe. Just see what you see. Learn from it. Go out into your life and live it. And he says in the new movie, you're going to see it. I think it was part of the clip.
Yeah.
He says, I don't worship, I live it.
there's a meaning in there that so many people, they want to have a set of doctrines that they follow. Just tell me what I have to do. That's not the way God works.
That's robotic.
As soon as you've got the rules set down, you're already overriding that sense of justice you had as a baby. You're already saying, okay, this is what's just and right. Whereas the baby just had a sense of justice. And sometimes the nicest thing done to it, I see a child when a parent's being too smothering and the child is there, oh, do you want this piece of candy? Don't you like this? And you see them and the child's looking, if it's an aware child, and they back away. They're not backing away from the candy. It's the energy behind that candy. And the parent is only duplicating what was done to them.
I remember one time this lady came up to one of our grandkids, I think my dad's grandkids, in other words, and she says, that baby's so cute, I just want to eat it. And my dad says, she would if you let her, psychically. And it was just so funny because, I think the innocence of a child is just so yummy to us because we're such broken, fallen individuals that you see that innocence and you just want to soak it up, is a better way of saying it.
And that's what we call love. And that kind of love, that's one, I think that's one of the things that used to puzzle me. Why do we have, there's certain languages that have 25, like the Eskimos have all kinds of words for snow. Because there's different kinds of snow, and they describe one snow one way and one icy snow another, and they have all these words. We have one word, love. And we use all kinds of things are love. Like I said the last week, we love our Doritos, and we love our pets, and we love our children, and we love our great resort or our favorite book, or we're using the same word, and obviously we're not doing the same things with these things. But why would we use the same word to describe so many different and sometimes critical things? Because if I'm not mistaken, the heart of Christianity is all about loving your neighbor. And I think the reason we don't have different words to describe the different kinds is because we want to get it a little muddled. Believe it or not, it's an unconscious thing. We don't want to be that precise. And people think if they act out love, they are loving. If they do a loving thing, the beauty is, Roy often referred to this. He said the greatest love a man hath is to give up his life for his fellow man or woman, to give up your life. But always we give the example of someone who just didn't even think. They jumped on the hand grenade. They didn't think. They stood in front of the gun and got the bullet instead. They didn't even think about it. They didn't decide, I'm going to give my life. It just happened. So really, true love is a spontaneous reaction that comes out of you some way. It's really not you. It's that you're letting yourself be driven or moved by this spontaneous movement, which every child starts out with. They have a spontaneous sense of right and wrong and a spontaneous innocence that gets corrupted as we grow. And the miracle of life, in my opinion, is that God sent His Son to bring us. We all are going to lose that. He's going to send His Son to bring us back to that. A very special way. And He doesn't bring us back from outside in, like the minister telling you all the things that Christ said. That's not the way it works. It works inside. His presence gets in you, and there becomes a battle inside of you. Because His presence, if you let it in, begins to do the war for you. You don't do the fighting. Just like a child thought he had to defend himself against the craziness of the world, and he began resenting and getting angry, and he began locked into this. The child is. There's another way you become a child again. Remember, Jesus said, you must become as a child. And I said, what are you talking about? And what He's saying is there's this new process that started with Him, where He actually can come into you and begin to unlock this nature that we have, because it's our fallen nature.
Yeah,
and we actually can become, this seems so contradictory. How can you become innocent again if you've lost your innocence? That's impossible, right? You've lost it.
And you watch people. If I look at the audience and people at home, and you look at them and you see that they are a bucket of life. Their life is filled with all the things that have happened to them. They're like a bucket. And I think that so often we carry our buckets of life with us. Traumas. Uncle Jerry did this. My mom did that. My dad did this. The mean bully did that. The pornography on the internet got in my mind. And whatever it is that is in your buckets, you carry them with you. So then when you walk up to somebody, if you're innocent, trying to return to innocence, so I try to leave my suitcase of stuff at the door when I come in here. And I look at somebody, I'll use Chuck as an example. Am I looking at the bucket of his life? All the things, is he holding on to those things? Or is he like that meme that says the butterfly that's trying to fly and it's tied to a big boulder and it says, let stuff go. You can't fly, you can't flitter away, you can't run and frolic and play in the sun with all these suitcases and buckets of life. The reality is, the last thing Jesus says, forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do. We've got to be able to go, I'm letting go of that. The first thing that happens is when you think, oh, Tim didn't do this. Beverly did that. Trying to remember those buckets of how they sinned against you. I watch people all the time. And I've told people, just own it. Just own it. It's not that big of a deal. The reality is, if I took what you said to me and I was like, oh, she's mean, and I put it in that bucket, all I'm doing is making my life harder by having to carry that much more weight of all the wrong things that have happened to me, and oh, woe is me, I got a bad lot in life, I've had all these horrible things, and then you start becoming that weights and measures person, it's not fair. It's like, and you put all your buckets of garbage on the side of what's not fair. And the reality is that you forget to just go, doesn't matter. Today is the first day of the rest of my life. I can't make her or him or them forgive me. But if I've truly changed, the next time I see that person, they'll go, what's different about you? And the first words out of my mouth can be, I'm sorry for what I did. I didn't think. Try to keep it as simple as possible. You don't need that wave of reason. The reasons don't matter. Just the I'm sorry. That's really all that matters. My dad said the other day, he says, why doesn't so-and-so come around anymore? I forgive them. All they have to do is say I'm sorry and it's forgotten about. And then I thought to myself, he's already forgotten about it. He's already forgiven them. He's waiting for them to come around and say, or they could come around and my dad say, do you think what you did was right? Or whatever it might be. You have your opportunity. That's the beauty of life, is we have thousands of opportunities almost daily because of all the seconds in the day. Every second counts, every minute counts, every hour counts, every day counts. Don't let your buckets overfloweth with judgment. Go ahead.
So, a question came to me as you were talking. How do you let go of those buckets?
Go like this.
No, that's an excellent
It's a good question.
That is an excellent question. I don't know if there's that quick an answer.
Right.
Because everyone is struggling with this. They're carrying I always love that they had a program called The Biggest Loser. And at some point, the finalists in this contest trying to lose all this weight because they're obese, they have to do a race where they carry all the weight they lost in a just dead weight. Wow. And they can barely carry it because they're in better shape now, and now they have to carry 140 pounds around the racetrack. And they can't believe that they carried this before because they could walk around the racetrack with this weight, and now it is so alien to them to carry this weight around. And this is what they carried all the time.
Yeah.
So we're in this struggle. The question is, how do you let go? What is the process how does it begin? Not so much how does it work, but how does it begin for you? You have something you wanted to say?
I don't have all the answers, but I'll share one thing.
You don't have all the answers.
No, I don't. But I'll share one thing because it was pretty important for me. I had a very cruel mother growing up, and really a lifelong resentment. But for many years, it was just I wasn't even aware of it. It was subconscious and covered up by drugs and stuff. But eventually, I became aware of it. What had happened, and I just couldn't get over it. I was very stuck. I was stuck, and even did little mental things in my mind. Thought I'd forgiven her when I hadn't forgiven her, and I was just stuck.
But you keep seeing it's not enough.
Pardon?
What you're doing, you notice that what you're doing, because first you didn't even know you had it.
No, yeah.
And then you saw you had it, and then you tried to get rid of it.
You have to see it.
And you haven't still seen, but every time you see that what you're doing isn't.
It became undeniable that, that there I had the problem. But I couldn't do anything about it.
So what did you do, finally?
Well, actually, a friend gave me some good advice. I think he said, ask God to show you that your mom couldn't help herself. And I asked God to show me. It seemed ridiculous, but I'd done everything in the world to try and get over it, and I couldn't. But I was willing to try anything.
Well, there you go. So you went to that same thing at some point. Forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do.
Right, and then and you know what? God did show me. And I don't like to get into the details. He did show me, but the way he showed me is he showed me that something that I had done where I couldn't help myself.
That you needed to be forgiven for.
I saw that.
Yeah.
And when I saw that, the penny dropped. And when the penny dropped, it was gone.
All right.
That is the key. You've said that better than I've ever heard anybody say that.
Yeah.
Because the way you saw that she couldn't help herself is because you saw that you can't help yourself. You know what that undermines in you? That proud nature that wants to do it itself. Because you saw the truth of it. The willful
So
nature.
we become willful. We want to will ourselves to forgive. And then guess what? The willfulness is just powering the anger anyway. It's just a
And
continuation.
that presence that brought that realization to you will continue to visit you for the rest of your life, and will continue to unlock things that you didn't realize, but it's not so hard anymore because you saw that.
Catherine.
Sorry. Because I recently had a seizure again, and I've always been my will, I've always been so strong, I'm 56 now, and it's not working anymore, I don't have that strength I had when I was in my 30s and my 40s, where I'm gonna prove myself, and I'm gonna do this, not. And it's just been painful to. And then the pride always kicks in, as you guys are talking. I can see yeah, I did all those things. It's just so strong, And even I go to the doctor and she tells me, you're epileptic, and now I can't drive for 6 months, and that pisses me off, and I know I'm not epileptic, I'm just angry. But now I'm in the system, and it's, and I have a feeling there's an answer even in that, I just.
You know what?
I can just separate from.
Let me say this. So what happens is, a lot of times, we fight with ourselves. We fight against ourselves. And actually, we're having a battle inside of us, right? And we battle ourselves to the ground. And people see us writhing and wriggling on the ground. And you'll see some of that in the documentary that we're going to be showing, Finding God. The exorcisms, whatever you want to call them, my father calls them release. And you see these people, they're fighting and they're battling inside of their own selves. And the reality is, at some point you have to hit the wall. So maybe you've hit the wall because now you've handed yourself over to the system, which will then put a name on what you have. And that name will go on the tag on your toe in the morgue when you finally, when you finally haven't learned your lesson all the way to the grave, right? The drugs will make you, what my father says, stronger so that you can be wronger, because you'll mask the real problems with some sort of a drug. You'll feel better about yourself, and you can
they
live
made
longer.
me
and
feel
be-
worse, actually, these drugs. When I went to the emergency room last time, the doctor's like, he was a cool guy, and he's like, you have to take this medicine. The first time I'm like, no. I know that's not, I knew it was my anger, and then, but I listened to him, and I've been taking it it happened on the 6th of January, and I feel worse. And I see all the side effects, and I know I can't take them.
Okay, so it's interesting because when I'm doing something wrong in my life, I go, what is the genesis? What is the beginning of this thing that I'm doing? Where did this thing come into me? So I'll tell a story about myself, okay? Have a seat back. Sit back and just listen. This may help you. We all have to wonder, where did we consciously allow the dark side to come in? Where did that happen? And you have to wonder where that happened. For me, I remember I was angry at my dad. Anger is knocking at the door. Courage did not get up and say, get the hell out of here. Right? The door opened up. Anger came into me because I allowed it. Here's how it happened. I was angry at my dad for whatever reason. It doesn't matter. Little kids get angry. I was about 8 years old. And I said to my mom, I said, do we have any cookies? Because my dad, that's what it was. My dad says, no more cookies and no more cake. You guys are all eating poorly, and this is ridiculous. The house is full of potato chips, cookies, and cakes. And so he says, no more of this. And so all us kids were like, ah!
Rebellion!
Get the spears! Get the guns! I think I was 8. A revolution. So my dad was at work, and I said to my mom, I said, is there any cookies anywhere? What happened? Forgive her, Father, for she knows not what she did. But she said to me, there's some cookies in the pantry behind the chicken soup. But your father's going to be home soon, so you better hurry up and have a couple cookies before your dad gets home. Right? My mom was probably angry at my dad too. We joined forces in that moment. But here's what happened. the genesis, the beginning for me of choosing the wrong side was at 8 years old. I said, oh, what he doesn't know won't hurt him. So I can be deceptive. I'm not sure I used the words, but it was in my mind. I can do what I want as long as he doesn't find out. Right? So as a little boy, I said, I can do this as long as I don't get caught. Right? And then, from the time I was 8 years old till I was about 20 years old, I was on this thing of I can do whatever I can get away with. Right? Isn't that everybody? We can, if mom and dad don't find out, if the police don't catch us, if the boss doesn't catch us, whatever, if we can get away with it, what they don't know won't hurt them. So I embraced it, okay? Then, one day, I had an awakening. And it was powerful. And I realized I don't want to be this way anymore. Do you want to be this way anymore that we've been, that have caused us to do all these things, Catherine and Beverly and Tim and Diane and everybody? Everybody watching? Do you really want to continue that way? No. So I thought, I don't want to be this way anymore. God, help me to see what I need to see, okay? And I had an understanding that I just have to be honest. So I went on this little bit of a quest to be honest, now I'm going to willfully be honest, okay? But I was moving in a direction. It was a better direction. It was a better direction than continuing to accept the liar, because the liar was in me. So about when I was 25, I had my own business, I was successful, I was getting away with murder, in essence. I had been very, very, very lucky in my life just because everything went my way. And I remember thinking to myself, man, I can't get caught. Has the gambler ever thought that? I can't lose, right? Has the thief or the drunk ever thought, this is too good to be true? Well, it always is. So I remember I had gone somewhere and dropped off a car to get some tires, and I was walking home, and I walked by this psychiatrist's office. And I had heard about this psychiatrist, around town, small town. And so I stopped out in front and I looked and I went, I want to go meet that guy. I don't know why this happened. So I opened the front door and there was the receptionist. And she says, can I help you? And I said, is Dr. So-and-so here? She says, yes. Do you have an appointment? I said, no, I just want to meet him. And in she took me. So I went into this room, and a couple minutes later, this doctor guy came in. He says, hi, nice to meet you. What can I do for you? I said, I don't know, but there's something in me. I don't understand. Maybe you can help me. He says, all right, well, sit up on that table there. So I sat up on the table with the piece of paper on it so they can change the paper after your butt's gone. The next butt can sit. And I sat there and he says, so what's the problem? I said, I don't know. I just know there's something wrong. So he says, well, lay down. Let's take a little journey. So I laid down. He says, close your eyes. Close my eyes. He says, let's go for a journey inside of you. He says, just what do you see when you close your eyes? Close your eyes and look inside. What do you see? And I said, nothing. He says, go a little further. And I said, okay. My eyes were closed. I said, still nothing. He says, go a little further. I said, well, there's kind of a big round cantaloupe right in the middle of me. He says, a cantaloupe? I said, well, I guess it's like sinew. Like sinew. And he goes, well, what do you mean? He says, what's inside of it? I said, I don't know. He says, well, dig into it. This is very interesting stuff, right? This is all in real time. This happened this quick. So I kind of dug into it. And he says, what's inside of it? I said, there's a glass ball inside of it. He says, a glass ball? He says, what's inside of the glass ball? And I kind of, laying there with my eyes closed, looked. And I said, there's like a rat. And he goes, a rat? And I said, yeah. And it wasn't really shocking to me. It was just laying there. He says, well, what's the rat's face look like? And I said, I don't know. It's kind of got its back up against the back of the glass ball. And he says, well, go around to the other side and see what its face looks like. And so I kind of, like that in my mind, and the rat kind of moved its tail end around. And I said, it won't let me see its face. He says, well, look, go around the other side. And so I kind of looked around this side, and the rat moved around that side. And he says, what's it look like? I said, I don't know. Oh, I know what it is. Oh my gosh. It's me. It's me. That rat inside of me is me. Because I embraced, what is a rat? Sneaky. Yeah. A rat goes behind the walls. A rat takes things when you're not looking. A rat chews away at things when you're not looking. I took the spirit of the rat, and it was me inside of there. And I opened my eyes, and I looked him right in the eye, and I said, that rat is me. I accepted that rat when I was 8 years old, when my mom gave me the cookies, and I went, I can get away with anything nobody knows about. That's the spirit of that rat. And it's in me. That's why it doesn't want me to see its face, because it's got my face on it. And I sat up, and I stood up, and I go, thank you. And he goes, okay. And I walked out the door, and I've never seen him again. And I went back there a few years later, and his place was gone. And I guess he's still in town, this guy. I got to go thank him someday. But I was 25 years old. But the interesting thing is that inside of us, we make a home for whatever that thing is, whether it's a rat, a pig, lust, whatever. For me, it was that's my story, right? But we all have, Catherine, we all have whatever it is that we embraced. So you got to go back and find out the genesis of where you started to be angry and were okay with it, and let that, whatever that pride, that will, that anger, whatever that thing is inside of you, you got to go back. How can you do that? You got to meditate, and you got to be still and know that He is God. And you have to let Him, of yourself you can do nothing, let Him show you. And you have to really, truly stop all this garbage. This garbage. So for me, come back to me for a moment. I walked back to my business, and I was never the same again. But guess what? What I had done for 25 years, well, I was 25 years old, what I had done up to that point was now done. And now I had to spend the next 25 years learning how to not make an excuse for it, learning how to own it, and it takes a long time. I can tell you, you're not just going to go, I'm better. You may feel better for a few minutes, but it'll creep back. The reality is that you have made a home for that because you have fed the wrong side and kept that thing alive in you, and now it's consuming you from the inside out. And you just have to learn how each day, and you know my father's meditation, each day, come back to your center, be still, and know that He is God and He is the only one that can help you. And stop trying to be willful about it. Stop being hateful about what's happening now. Just, you have to drop all of this, the reasons. The reasons don't matter. I mean, you may be able to see them and all that, but they don't matter. It doesn't matter. Only what matters is what tomorrow will bring. What today happens and what that will bring tomorrow. And each day build toward a new future. And then all of a sudden, guess what? You'll start to see things differently and smell life differently and taste life differently. And don't allow yourself to slip back. Every time you find yourself slipping back, you know what? Find a chair, sit down, come back to your center. That evil that is in you cannot live within the light. It can only live in the darkness that you snuff out the light. Yeah, that's right. You snuff it out by kind of allowing, feeding.
Meditating is hard for me.
Well, then, if meditating is hard for you, maybe you need to give it a little break for a little while. Take a walk on the beach. Feel the sand.
I kind of do that too, Alan.
Appreciate nature. Go out in the snow and just start to appreciate life instead of hating life. We have a beautiful world that we live in.
I would like to say something because we've already discussed that I had very difficult parents, not just one, two. And it was so easy to blame them for my predicament. And I was stuck in blame my whole life. I'm just coming out of it now. And the more I'm coming out of it, I'm seeing what my role was that I never got to see. I was blinded to my own, how I let this happen. I was like an innocent bystander. I'm really not an innocent bystander.
No, but as you return
But I wanted
to the innocence, like now that you're seeing it, you're returning to your innocent self. Believe it. That's what you need to do. That's what we talked about earlier. Before you can enter the kingdom of heaven, you have to be like a child and return to innocence.
It's the innocent self, but it's also the helpless self.
Right.
So you have to be
I
helpless.
don't like being helpless.
No. There's a part of you that doesn't, but there's a part of you that needs to revisit that because that's our sin. The helpless self did something we shouldn't have done, but we did it. And all God wants to do is make this life an experience where He can lead you back to see if you're willing to go to the helpless place, He will show you what you did, but it's not your fault. But He'll show you that because you're running from the knowledge that you think it's your fault. And if you see that you're out of control, you will be able to see everybody else is out of control, but not in a proud way. It's a humbling way, because every time you stand in that knowledge, not your knowledge of it, but His making you aware of how helpless you are and how you can't fix it, that proud part of you is being suppressed. And in that presence, just watching it, seeing that realization, He's changing because you have an appetite to see the truth about yourself in that way.
It's interesting too, because my father talks about the concentration camp where all these half-dead people came out, and there was one guy that came out and they're like, how is it that you're not skin and bones and you're not half dead? And what did the guy say? He says, well, I realized that if I hated them, then they would have me. And so I think that no matter what, even if you're in a concentration camp, you have to learn to be able to close your eyes, and even if you just breathe and appreciate that breath, even to the smallest things. Because you said you can't drive?
For 6 months.
So you have people that can,
I kick drugs. I have to find, I know.
yeah, you have to find
There's an answer.
this. That's right. But being angry at it is the last thing you want to do. The last thing. And I think
understand things happen for a purpose.
that's right. That's like I said, you will find yourself battling yourself out on the floor, and everybody's like, what's going on? What the hell? Demons, But in reality, it's you fighting with yourself.
You got to realize, anything you do that is on this path, you can do it the wrong way, because there's a force in the world that's trying to distract you. And so you're doing the right thing, you're moving in the right direction, and it will pull you off on a side trail to get you away from where you're going. It can't go there, but it can pull you away. So you're aware of your breath. Only value in being aware of your breath or your heartbeat or the feeling of your blood pulsing into your fingers, the only value is you're in the moment.
Right.
If you're in the moment and you let God's reality penetrate, it's something you can't see, but it's a presence, it's an awareness that will come. If you let that penetrate, you will be in a different state. Or if you focus so much on the breath or the heartbeat or the feeling of the pulse, it will distract you from being in that moment. So the very thing that can bring you there, so I got to stop a minute. I'm just, you realize you're just too caught up, and you just stop and you close your eyes and you sort of take a deep breath and let it go.
There's traps everywhere.
But
So you have to be conscious.
But what happens in this state is you can now let his consciousness come in you, or you can focus on being very quiet.
Or being willful
See,
about
being
it.
willful about it. See, so that will always can be pulled in, and if you see the will as it's being pulled in and you just notice it, you're just slightly separated and you can see it. You don't stop it, you just see it. The more you see it, the less power it has. The more you're separated from it. And it's not something you can turn on and turn off. It's something you have to revisit many times, but it perfects itself. And its perfection doesn't make you feel perfect at all, because you have to constantly be willing to see your mistake.
So for this, I'll come back to the rat. You probably think, whatever happened to the rat? 30 years later, my mom says, I'm not the one with the rat inside. I said, oh my gosh. That's so interesting. I had forgotten about the rat for 30 years. But the rat was gone.
He starved.
Basically, yeah. It's like two wolves are fighting. Which one will win? The one you feed. I stopped feeding the rat. And it just gone. It's all not real anyway, you know what I'm saying? In other words, there wasn't an actual rat inside of me, but it was the spirit of the rat. So the point is that it's so interesting how my mom threw that at my face. And I was like, wow, yeah. Whatever happened to the rat? My little friend. And I just thought, it's gone. I don't have that spirit anymore. So I think appreciating life, that you have all your digits, you have so much to live for. And even if you didn't, you watch these people that have leprosy and whatever, you can see in the Bible stories. It doesn't matter what happens to the outside. It really matters what's going on. So it's like, but you have so much to live for, but you're taking away your own life. You got to just quit it. You got to quit it, yeah.
Yeah, I was just thinking about something I've noticed with myself. When I fall into that really dark mode where life is just terrible, there's nothing good about it, I lose the perception that I'm doing it to myself, that I don't even recognize that I'm feeding this dark mode of thinking, and that I have another way of looking at things. And I was just thinking about something Roy said about if you let one resentment get to you during the day, for example, in traffic, how it can open a door to a whole slew of negative thinking. And I guess the main point I wanted to make is that I don't always see that I have a choice of looking at things different. Just because one thing doesn't work out the way I want it to, for example, I'm trying to get rid of a tenant right now I'm having problems with, and she's kind of got the law on her side to some point. I have to follow a procedure I really don't want to. But all of a sudden my whole world came to an end because of this one incident, when I realized this is just one incident. This isn't my whole life. This is going to pass a couple weeks or whatever.
It's interesting about that in our lives when things don't go the way we want them to, because we set ourselves up to be kings and queens. And when things don't go the way we want them to, we get angry. Like a little child gets angry. I want something. I want that toy. I want that food, whatever. And when you see that welling up, you need to take a look at that and go, all right, I'm supposed to learn something here. For example, I've had that same scenario where somebody's not paying for their rent or whatever it is, and it's like, I want to get the hell out, whatever it is. But you said the law is on their side. So you look at it and go, well, okay, since the law is on their side, I have to be patient. But what if the law wasn't on their side and it was just the right thing to do to give them a chance, right? I don't want to throw you out, to be fair. I don't want to throw you out. You're not paying your bill. How about if we try this? And if you don't, I'm going to have to do this. But so I had this happen to me recently, similar to you. This guy would not leave a house. He wouldn't pay the rent. He would not leave. So I kept on saying, all right, I'm going to give you, another week, another 2 weeks, another week. And he was always had these reasons, a wave of reasons. And they all seemed reasonable to me. My wife left me. My dog left. My kids are here. There's nobody loves me. I'm going to go eat worms. I thought, I want to be fair. I want to do the fair and right thing. So it got to the point where I had done all the fair and all the right and I thought, now he's taking advantage of me. So I said, all right, here's what we're going to do. You have until this date to do this, and then we're going to go to court, and then you're going to have a mark on your back that says nobody else is going to want to rent from you. So we went to court. This happened. It's very interesting because you brought that up. And it was me against him, and they called my name and the other person's name. We both stood up, and the judge says, what's going on? I said, well, I've tried everything, and I understand his plight. Is there something we can do, Your Honor, to help this guy? And he says, that's not my job today. There is, but it's not my job today. Today is the day I have to figure out whether we throw him out on his ear, basically. And I said, well, I looked at the guy and I said, will you leave on your own so that I don't have to do this? He says, I will. And the judge says, why don't you guys step out into the lobby, and I'll give you 5 minutes to work it out. He says, are you willing to do that? I said, yeah, I'll do that. We stepped out of the lobby and I said, look, I didn't want to do this, but you wouldn't leave. I tried. And he says, I'm sorry. I'll leave. So then he left, right? Then on Christmas Day, the guy that I had to throw out on his hard luck, I gave him as much time as I could, but he has to pick himself up and do something. Sent me a note, text. He said, Merry Christmas. And I said, thank you. So I realized that part of me wants to be that tough guy. Then there's a side of me that wants to love my neighbor as my brother, right? So I realize that there's always the law way of doing things. There's always the system way of doing things. And do I want to be caught up in that lawful thing? Or do I want to try to be a fair man and let people see what's in my heart and lead with my heart? Lead with my heart and my honor and my courage. I'm not afraid to fight. And I had to go fight. But I made a choice. It cost me a little bit of money. But the reality is that may change that man's whole life. I don't know. Now it's up to him. So, back to you. You're angry because things didn't work out for you and you had that anger again, right? So what we are really doing more than anything, it doesn't matter about the renter, it doesn't matter about your anger, of the system. It matters that each day we move closer to being Christ-like. That is what my focus is that each day, if I can move closer to being what Christ was like and what Christ set into our hearts, the rules of humanity, how I should be towards my fellow brother. That's what I really work on every day. I also then, behind that, have to try and do business and have a family and do all the things that are behind trying to watch my thoughts, watch my anger, watch my will, watch my greed, watch my lust, whatever it is, so that I'm watching them. And I told Chuck the other day, I have become the watcher. One of my friends accused me of sitting in a chair and just not saying anything. Right now, I don't know what to say. Sometimes I don't know what to say. But if I watch, at some point, the answer will come into me. Because I'm not being willful. I'm waiting, I'm watching, and I'm not sitting on my laurels. I'm still doing my stuff. The answer comes of what I should do. I have to be patient. So patience is a virtue. And we've lost our virtue. We've become impatient. We've become convenience-oriented, convenience stores. If you think about it, our phone disconnects. Stupid phone. We forget that it goes all the way to outer space and back down to the other person in a flash, and we're angry that it dropped and we had to redial. I mean, we need to appreciate, wow, this is an amazing thing. It's amazing. It disconnected. I'll call him right back. But instead, we always jump to being angry. We just need to learn how to enjoy life a little bit and be thankful that we have a life to go out into this world and to have every opportunity we have to deal with it more like Christ. WWJD. What would Jesus do?
Oh,
I love that one.
never heard that.
Well, I think it's interesting that, if we can leave it today with every single thing that happens in our day, every single thing, that there may be a little opportunity to be a little more like Jesus, and we need to take those opportunities when they come, because some people don't have them. Some people have fought until they find themselves in prison, and even then, they're going to have, but then they get locked away. They get their driver's license taken away. Your freedoms are taken away. We take them away from ourselves. We got to stop that. Catch yourself, people. Catch yourself. Thanks for watching.